The final day arrived. The demonstrations were over. Now the council would make their assessment and announce their findings to the galaxy. The arena was packed with more beings than ever before. Word had spread throughout the station about the human demonstrations. Aliens who had never cared about the combat readiness assessment now filled every seat, desperate to see these strange creatures one more time. The human delegation stood on the arena floor with the other species. Ambassador Yuna was at the front, dressed in formal clothes. Commander Taiho stood beside her in his military uniform. Behind them were the 12 soldiers, including the bandaged Minho and the still-healing Hannah. They looked small among the giants. The Valkyrie towered over them. The Mordics gleamed like walking tanks. The Solari glowed with psychic power. But something had changed. The other species were not standing close to the humans anymore. They had moved away, creating a gap of empty space around the Earth delegation. It was subtle, but it was there. The High Speaker Elin floated to the center of the council platform. Her skin was shifting through solemn colors. The Galactic Council has completed its combat readiness assessment, she announced. We have observed the military capabilities of all participating species. We now present our findings. She began reading from a list. The Valkyrie were rated as superior combat threat. The Mordics received extreme combat threat. The Solari were marked as high tactical threat. Species after species received their ratings. Then she came to the humans. Ellen paused. The pause went on for a long time. Too long. The crowd began to murmur. The human species, Ellen finally said, has been rated as unprecedented. Silence fell across the arena. Unprecedented? Vorn demanded from the Mordic section. What does that mean? What rating is that? Ellen looked at the Mordic's general. Alungla. For the first time in anyone's memory, she looked uncertain. We do not have a rating that applies, she admitted. Human physical capabilities are below average for combat species. Their speed, strength, and natural defenses are minimal. By standard measures, they should be rated as low threat. The crowd began to relax. That made sense. The humans were clearly weak. However, Ellen continued, and her voice became harder. We have observed that standard measures do not apply to humans. She pressed a button, and images appeared in the air above the arena. Images of Private Dongwu running for hours without stopping. Images of Lieutenant Hana fighting with a useless arm. Images of Corporal Minho crawling through fire with a broken body. Humans possess a quality we cannot measure, Ellen said. They continue beyond physical limits. They fight beyond logical endpoints. They refuse to accept conditions that should end combat. She turned to face the human delegation directly. We do not understand how they do this. Our scientists have no explanation. Our psychologists have no models. All we know is that when we calculate the outcome of a conflict with humans, we cannot predict when they will stop fighting. She paused to let her words sink in. Because they might never stop. The arena was completely silent now. Every alien understood the meaning of those words. In war, you need to know when your enemy will surrender. You need to know when the fight will end. Without that knowledge, conflict becomes impossible to win. Therefore, Ellen announced, the Council has created a new classification for the human species. They are designated as endurance threat. This means that while they may be defeated in single battles, the long-term cost of conflict with them is considered unacceptable. A Valkyrie general stood up in his section. Are you saying we cannot defeat these small creatures? Ellen looked at him calmly. I am saying that defeating them would require more than you are willing to give. You would win battles. Many battles. But they would keep coming. Injured. Broken, dying, they would keep coming, and eventually you would grow tired. You would want the war to end, but they would not stop. They would never stop, and in the end, that is how you would lose. The general sat down slowly. He had nothing to say. Additionally, Ellen continued, the Council is issuing a recommendation to all member species. We recommend updating all treaties with Earth to full non-aggression status. We recommend avoiding any actions that might result in military conflict with humans. Vorn stood up from the Mordic section. This is madness. We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered 40 worlds. And you tell us to fear these soft creatures? Ellen turned to face him. Her ancient eyes were cold. General Vorn, you watched the same demonstrations I watched. Tell me honestly, would you want to fight a war against beings who will crawl through fire rather than surrender? Who will fight until their hearts stop and then try to get up again? Who treat pain as information rather than a command? Vorn was silent. I thought not, Ellen said. The assessment is complete. This session is ended. The crowd began to disperse, but they moved slowly, throwing glances at the human delegation. Those glances held something new, something that had not been there before. Later that day, Ambassador Yuna met with Commander Taiho in their quarters. Outside the window, transport ships were leaving the station. Many of them belonged to species that were rushing home to update their military strategies. We did it, Yuna said quietly. Earth is safe. Taiho nodded. For now. The Council fears what they do not understand. Once they understand us better, that fear may fade. Then we will remind them. Yuna smiled slightly. That is what humans do. We remind the universe why it should respect us. There was a knock at the door. Taiho opened it to find General Vorn standing outside. The massive Mordics had to bend down to fit through the doorway. General, Taiho said calmly. Can I help you? Vorn looked at Taiho for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed. It was a small bow, just a tilt of his metal head. But from a Mordic's general who had never bowed to anyone, it meant everything. I came to pay my respects, Vorn said. I have fought many enemies. I have seen many warriors, but I have never seen anything like your soldiers. Thank you, Taiho replied. Vorn straightened. I have one question. Your soldiers, they were injured. They were exhausted. They were destroyed, but they kept going. Why? What makes them do this? Taiho thought about the question. It deserved a real answer. On Earth, he said slowly, we have a saying. Fall 7 times, stand up 8. It means that no matter how many times you are knocked down, you get up one more time. This is how we have always lived. Our planet tried to kill us. Our history tried to break us. But we kept getting up. Vorn considered this. You are saying that suffering is part of who you are? No, Taiho said. I am saying that overcoming suffering is part of who we are. We do not enjoy pain. We are not seeking hardship. But when it comes, we face it. And we keep facing it until it ends or we do. Vorn was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once. I hope, he said, that the Mordics never have to fight the humans in a real war. I hope the same, Taiho replied. War is terrible. But if it comes, we will be ready. Vorn nodded again and left without another word. That night, the human delegation prepared to return to Earth. Their mission was complete. They had shown the galaxy what humans were made of. In the medical bay. The injured soldiers were being prepared for travel. Corporal Minho was still covered in bandages, but he was smiling. Lieutenant Hana's arm was in a sling, but she walked with her head high. Sergeant Jisoo helped Private Dongwoo pack his bag. Dongwoo's legs were sore from his endless running, but he had no regrets. Do you think they understand now? Dongwoo asked. Jisoo looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, thousands of alien species were discussing what they had seen. Thousands of military leaders were revising their strategies. Thousands of beings who had thought humans were weak were now afraid. They understand enough, Jisoo said. They know we will not stop. They know we will not quit. They know that fighting us means fighting forever. Is that what we are? Dongwu asked. People who fight forever. Jisoo smiled. It was a small smile, tired but proud. We are people who never give up. There is a difference. She picked up her bag. Come on, let's go home. The human transport ship left Station Omega as the artificial sun was rising over the metal landscape. It was a small ship compared to the massive warships of other species. It carried no great weapons. It had no special armor, but it carried 12 soldiers who had changed the way the universe saw humanity. And somewhere in the galaxy, in meeting rooms and military headquarters, on ships and planets and space stations, the greatest warriors in existence were quietly updating their records. Under Earth, they wrote a single word, dangerous, and they meant it. The third day brought the survival test. This was the final demonstration before the council made their assessment. Each species had to show how their warriors could survive in harsh conditions. The arena had been transformed. Half of it was now a frozen wasteland with temperatures cold enough to kill most beings in minutes. The other half was a burning desert with heat that could cook flesh. Warriors would have to cross both environments to complete the test. The Velthari sent their champion into the cold first. He lasted 15 minutes before his massive body began to fail. The cold was too strong. He had to be rescued. The Mordics did better. Their metal bodies could handle extreme temperatures. But even they struggled in the burning desert. The heat warped their metal skin. They completed the test, but barely. The Solari refused to participate. Their delicate bodies could not handle such conditions. They claimed the test was unfair. Then the humans stepped forward, but it was not the soldiers who volunteered. It was Corporal Minho, the one who had beaten the heavy bag until his hands bled. And he was already injured. During a training accident the day before, Minho had cut his leg badly. The wound had been treated, but it was still fresh. He walked with a visible limp. Is the human sure he wants to participate? The high speaker asked. There was genuine concern in her voice now. The council had seen enough to know that humans did not follow normal rules. Commander Taiho nodded. Corporal Minho is ready. Minho stepped into the cold zone. He wore only his standard uniform. No special protection. No heating devices. Just cloth and skin against temperatures that could freeze blood. The cold hit him immediately. His breath became visible fog. His skin turned red, then white. He started to shiver violently, but he walked forward. Each step was slow and careful. His injured leg made the walking harder. But he did not stop. He kept his arms moving, kept his blood flowing. He talked to himself, though no one could hear what he said. 5 minutes in the cold. 10 minutes. His lips turned blue. His movements became slower. But he was still moving. The Solari Queen leaned toward Ambassador Yuna, who had been invited to sit with the council. Why does he continue? The Queen asked. He is clearly suffering. His body is failing. Why does he not stop? Yuna watched Minho struggle through the cold. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed emotion. Because stopping is not an option, Yuna replied. Humans have a word for what he is doing. We call it perseverance. Perseverance? The Queen tasted the word. It was strange in her mouth. What does this mean? It means continuing when everything tells you to stop. It means refusing to quit, even when your body is broken and your mind is screaming for rest. It means choosing to suffer because the goal is more important than the pain. The Queen was silent for a long moment. On the arena floor, Minho had reached the halfway point. He left the cold zone and entered the heat. The change was brutal. His frozen body was suddenly hit with waves of burning air. The temperature shift alone could have killed a lesser being. Minho fell to his knees. The crowd held their breath. Minho pushed himself up. His injured leg buckled, and he fell again. Blood began to seep through his bandage. The wound had reopened. He pushed himself up again. Why? The Queen whispered. Why suffer like this? What does he gain? Yuna turned to look at the Queen. He gains nothing for himself. He suffers for his team, for his people, for Earth. Humans do not just fight for ourselves. We fight for each other. On the arena floor, Minho was crawling now. He could not walk anymore. His leg would not support him. So he crawled on his hands and knees through the burning sand. The heat was cooking him. His skin was red and blistered. Sweat poured from his body, only to evaporate instantly in the terrible heat. He looked like he was dying, but he was still moving. 100 meters to go. Minho's arms were shaking. His breath came in short, painful gasps. Blood left a trail behind him in the sand. 50 meters. The crowd was completely silent. Every alien in the arena was watching this one small human drag himself across the burning floor. Some of them had conquered planets. Some of them had destroyed entire fleets. But none of them had ever seen anything like this. 20 meters. Minho collapsed. His body hit the sand and did not move. For a long moment, everyone thought it was over. Then his hand moved. His fingers dug into the sand. He pulled himself forward. 1 arm length. Then another. 10 meters. His movement was barely visible now. Just tiny shifts in the sand as he inched forward. His eyes were closed. He might have been unconscious, but somehow, some part of him kept moving. 5 meters. The finish line was right there. Just a few more body lengths. But Minho had stopped. He was not moving anymore. Sergeant Jisoo stood at the edge of the arena, watching. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were clenched into fists. Come on, she whispered. Come on, Minho. One of Minho's hands moved. It reached forward and grabbed sand. He pulled. His body shifted slightly. Another reach. Another pull. The crowd began to react. Not cheering, exactly. Something else. A low sound of amazement and disbelief. Minho's hand crossed the finish line. Then his arm. Then his shoulder. And then he stopped. Medics rushed onto the arena floor. They surrounded Minho's broken body. For a terrible moment, everyone thought he was dead. But then his hand rose, just slightly. A thumbs up. The arena exploded. Not with cheering for a victory. With something deeper. Raw emotion. Aliens who had never understood humans suddenly understood. Something fundamental. Humans were insane. They would burn themselves to nothing rather than quit. They would crawl through fire with broken bodies. They would keep going until their hearts stopped beating. And even then, they would probably try to get back up. The Mordix General Vorn stood in his seat. His metal face was twisted with an expression no one had ever seen on a Mordix before. Awe. They are not warriors, he said slowly. They are something else. Something we do not have a word for. What do you mean? Asked the alien beside him. Vorn watched the medics carry Minho away. The human was barely alive. His body was destroyed. But he had finished the test. We fight because we are strong, Vorn said. The Velthari fight because they love battle. The Solari fight because they must protect their minds. But humans? He shook his head. Humans fight because they refuse to accept defeat. There is a difference. What difference? Vorn turned to look at the alien. His red eyes were serious. Strength can be overcome. Love of battle can be exhausted. The need to protect can be satisfied. He paused. But refusal? How do you overcome someone's refusal? How do you defeat someone who simply says no to defeat? The alien had no answer. Across the station, the council was already in emergency session. Their assessment calculations were being rewritten. Their threat evaluations were being updated. Humanity was no longer considered a minor species, and in the medical bay, Corporal Minho lay on a bed, his body covered in bandages. Lieutenant Hana sat beside him, her own injuries still healing. "You did it," she said quietly. Minho's eyes opened. They were bloodshot and tired, but they held a small spark of humor. Did they look scared? He asked. Hana smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in days. They looked terrified. Minho closed his eyes and allowed himself a small laugh, even though it hurt. Good. The second day came with a different energy in the station. The aliens walked through the corridors with less confidence than before. They looked at the human soldiers differently now. Not with pity, not with amusement. It was something that looked almost like concern. The council had called for combat demonstrations. Actual fighting. Not against each other, but against training drones. The drones were machines built to test warriors. They could hit hard. They could move fast. They could hurt. The Valkyrie went first again. Their champion, a warrior named Keth, destroyed 20 drones in 3 minutes. His massive body moved like a storm, breaking the machines with his bare hands. When he finished, he roared in victory. The crowd cheered. The Morix champion crushed 30 drones. His metal fists punched through their armor like paper. He did not even look tired when he finished. The Solari champion used her mind to disable 15 drones at once. She never touched them. She just thought, and they fell. Then came Lieutenant Hana. She walked onto the arena floor alone. She was small. She was thin. She looked like a child compared to the warriors who had come before her. The high speaker Ellen leaned toward her microphone. How many drones would the human like to face? Hana looked up at the council. Her face showed no emotion. 20. Murmurs spread through the crowd. 20? The Valkyrie champion had barely managed 20. This small human thought she could match him? Very well, Ellen said. Release the drones. 20 machines rose from the arena floor. They were humanoid in shape, made of black metal with red lights for eyes. They carried shock sticks that could deliver painful electric charges. They circled around Hana like predators around prey. Hana stood still. She closed her eyes. She breathed slowly. The first drone attacked. It moved fast. Its shock stick aimed at her chest. Hana moved faster. She stepped to the side at the last moment and grabbed the drone's arm. In one smooth motion, she twisted the arm, threw the drone over her hip, and smashed it into the ground. The machine cracked and went dark. Before anyone could react, 2 more drones attacked from different directions. Hana dropped low, letting their shock sticks pass above her head. She kicked the legs out from under one drone while punching up into the chest of the other. Both machines fell. The crowd went silent. Hana was not fighting like the Valkyrie, with raw power. She was not fighting like the Mortix, with unstoppable force. She was using the drone's own movements against them. When they pushed, she pulled. When they attacked high, she went low. Every movement was precise and efficient. 5 drones attacked at once. Hana flowed between them like water between rocks. She redirected a shock stick into another drone, causing 2 machines to destroy each other. She grabbed a drone's head and twisted it completely around. She kicked another drone so hard in the joint that its leg bent backward. In 60 seconds, 12 drones were destroyed. But then something went wrong. A drone managed to hit her. Its shock stick struck her left arm, sending electricity through her body. Hana gasped in pain and stumbled. The remaining drones sensed weakness. They attacked together. What happened next would be discussed in alien, bars, and military academies for years to come. Hana did not retreat. She did not call for help. With her left arm hanging useless at her side, she continued fighting. Her movements changed. They became harder, more aggressive. Where before she had been like water, Now she was like fire. She caught a shock stick with her good hand and ripped it from the drone. She used it as a weapon, smashing machine after machine. A drone hit her in the ribs. She grunted but kept fighting. Another drone struck her back. She stumbled but did not fall. Blood appeared on her face from a cut above her eye. She ignored it. 3 drones remained. They were programmed to recognize damaged opponents and increase aggression. They attacked with full force. Hannah dropped to one knee. For a moment, everyone thought she was finished. Then she exploded upward. She drove her shoulder into one drone, sending it flying. She grabbed another drone and used it as a shield against the third. When both machines were close together, she smashed their heads into each other. The last drone fell. Hannah stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by 20 broken machines. Her left arm hung useless. Her uniform was torn. Blood dripped from her face. She was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling rapidly. But she was standing. The arena was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. They just stared. General Vorn of the Mordics leaned forward in his seat. His metal face showed something it had never shown before. Respect. She should have stopped, he whispered to the alien beside him. When she was hurt, she should have surrendered. Why did she keep fighting? The alien had no answer. On the council platform, the High Speaker Ellen turned to her advisors. What is our analysis of the human fighting style? An advisor checked his tablet. His hands were shaking slightly. It appears to be a combination of multiple techniques. Some focus on using the opponent's force against them. Others focus on striking vulnerable points. The human was trained to find weakness and exploit it. And the injuries? Why did she not stop? The advisor was quiet for a moment. I do not know, High Speaker. Our models predict that pain should cause surrender. The human's behavior does not match our models. Down on the arena floor, medics were trying to approach Hannah. She waved them away with her good hand. Then she walked to Commander Taiho, who was standing at the edge of the arena. Status? Taiho asked. Arm is dislocated. 2 ribs cracked. Minor cuts. Hannah's voice was flat, as if she was reporting the weather. Can you continue? Hannah looked at him. Her eyes were hard. Yes, sir. Taiho nodded. Rest for now. We continue tomorrow. Hannah bowed slightly and walked toward the medical area. She walked on her own. She refused help. Every step clearly caused her pain, but she did not show it. In the crowd, the Solari Queen was speaking rapidly with her advisors. This changes our threat assessment completely. We assumed humans were Class 4. Minimal danger. I am now recommending upgrade to Class 2. Class 2? That puts them equal to the Velthari. Did you see what I saw? The Queen demanded. That creature was injured and continued fighting. She felt pain but ignored it. What happens when you fight an enemy who does not respond to pain? How do you make them stop? The question hung in the air. That night, no one in the station slept well. The alien warriors tossed and turned, dreaming of small humans who would not fall. The generals reviewed the footage again and again, looking for weaknesses, finding none. And in the human quarters, Lieutenant Hannah sat on her bed while a medic reset her dislocated arm. She did not make a sound when the bone popped back into place. You should rest for at least a week, the medic said. Hannah shook her head. There is training tomorrow, but your injuries will heal. Hannah looked at the medic with calm certainty. This is what we do. We break and we keep going. We bleed and we keep fighting. The body is just a tool. The mind decides when to stop. She stood up and tested her arm. It hurt. Everything hurt. The pain was just information. It was not a command. Is there anything else? She asked the medic. The medic shook his head. He had nothing more to say. He was beginning to understand what the aliens were discovering. Humans were not dangerous because of their bodies. They were dangerous because of their minds. Across the station, General Vaughn stood alone in his quarters. He looked at his metal hands. He had crushed rebellions with these hands. He had broken enemies who stood against him. He had never feared anyone. But tonight, for the first time in his long career, he felt something cold in his chest. He was not ready to call it fear. Not yet, but it was close. The message came on a cold Tuesday morning. Ambassador Yuna was drinking her coffee when her tablet lit up with a priority signal from the Galactic Council. She read the words 3 times before she believed them. All species must demonstrate combat readiness. Human delegation required at Station Omega. Failure to attend will result in removal from protective treaties. Yuna put down her coffee and called Commander Taiho immediately. Taiho was a military man. He had served in the Korean Special Forces for 20 years. His face was hard like stone, and his eyes had seen many difficult things. When Yuna explained the situation, he did not look worried. He looked curious. "They want to see how we fight?" Taiho asked. "They want to judge if we are worthy of their protection," Yuna replied. "The Galactic Council thinks we are weak. They have never seen humans in combat." This was true. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 5 years ago. In that time, they had been quiet. They traded goods. They shared culture. They smiled and shook hands with aliens who had 4 arms or no arms at all. But they had never shown their military strength. The aliens thought this meant humans had no strength to show. Taeho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Then we will educate them." 3 days later, a human transport ship arrived at Station Omega. The station was enormous. It floated in space like a metal moon, big enough to hold millions of beings from across the galaxy. The docking bay alone was the size of a small city. Yuna stepped off the ship first. She wore a simple black suit and carried herself with quiet confidence. Behind her came Taiho, dressed in his military uniform. And behind him came 12 soldiers from the Korean Special Forces. The soldiers did not look special. They were not tall like the Velthari, who stood 3 meters high. They were not covered in armor like the Mordics, whose skin was made of living metal. They did not have claws or fangs or poison glands. They were just humans. Medium height. Soft skin. 2 arms. 2 legs. Nothing impressive. A Velthari official met them at the gate. His name was Kren, and he looked down at the humans with something between pity and amusement. "Welcome to Station Omega," Kren said. His voice was deep like thunder. "The Council is pleased that humanity has chosen to participate in the combat readiness assessment. We are honored to be here." Yuna replied with a diplomatic smile. Kren made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The other species are already preparing. You will find the observation deck through the main corridor. The training demonstrations begin tomorrow. We would like to see these other species," Taiho said, "to understand what we will be measured against." Kren's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. Most species did not ask to see their competition. They were usually too afraid. But he shrugged his massive shoulders and gestured for the humans to follow. The observation deck overlooked a massive arena. It was a circle of white sand, surrounded by seats that rose high into the air. Thousands of aliens were already there, watching the preparations below. And what preparations they were. The Velthari warriors moved like giants made of muscle and fury. Each one carried weapons that glowed with energy. They practiced fighting moves that shook the ground. When one Velthari punched a training dummy, the dummy exploded into pieces. The Mordics were even more frightening. Their metal skin reflected the lights as they fought each other in pairs. The sound of their combat was like cars crashing together again and again. When they finished, neither fighter had a single scratch. Then there were the Solari. They were thin and beautiful, with skin that changed colors like a rainbow. but their beauty was deadly. They moved so fast that human eyes could barely follow them. One moment they stood still. The next moment, their opponent was on the ground, paralyzed by their psychic powers. The Krath were massive insects, each one the size of a truck. They had poison in their claws and acid in their mouths. They fought in swarms, moving together like one terrible mind. Species after species demonstrated their power. Some breathed fire. Some could turn invisible. Some had weapons built into their own bodies. Each one was more terrifying than the last. Yuna watched without expression. Taiho watched with interest, noting details, studying movements. The 12 soldiers behind them simply stood and observed. A Mordix general approached them. His name was Vorn, and he had conquered 40 worlds in his long career. His metal face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Little humans," Vorn said. "I see you watching. Are you scared yet?" Taiho turned to face the general. Vorn was twice his height and 5 times his weight. His arms could crush stone. His skin could stop bullets. "No," Taiho said simply. Vorn laughed. The sound was like grinding rocks. "You should be. Tomorrow, you will show the council what humans can do. And everyone here will see that you are the weakest species in the galaxy." "Perhaps," Taiho replied. "Or perhaps you will learn something new." Vorn laughed again and walked away, shaking his head. The other aliens nearby had heard the conversation. They whispered to each other in their various languages. Poor humans. Foolish humans. They did not even understand how outmatched they were. That night, in their assigned quarters, the Korean soldiers prepared. They checked their equipment. They reviewed their training plans. They ate simple meals and drank water. Sergeant Jisoo, a woman with short hair and calm eyes, sat with Private Dongwoo. "They think we are weak," Dongwoo said. "Let them think what they want," Jisoo replied. "Tomorrow we show them who we are." Across the station, in the grand hall where the alien leaders gathered, the betting had already begun. Every species was wagering on which race would impress the council most. The Velthari were favorites. The Mordix were close behind. Nobody bet on the humans. The odds were considered a waste of money. In her quarters, Ambassador Yuna looked out the window at the stars. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of humans who had no idea that their place in the galaxy was being decided in this station. Commander Taiho knocked on her door and entered. "The soldiers are ready," he said. "Are you sure about this?" Yuna asked. "If we fail tomorrow, the council might remove Earth from the protective treaties. We would be alone against species who could destroy us." Taiho stood beside her and looked at the same stars. "We have been alone before," he said. "Humans have always been alone. We came from a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. We are still here." He turned to face her. "Tomorrow, those aliens will see something they have never seen before. They have strength and speed and powers we cannot match. But we have something they will never understand." "What is that?" Yuna asked. Taeho smiled. "We do not stop, ever, no matter what." Outside, the stars continued to shine. Inside the station, aliens from across the galaxy slept peacefully, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was coming. The morning came quickly. The arena was full. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, their strange voices creating a noise like a storm. Colors and shapes moved everywhere as species from 100 worlds waited to see the demonstrations. In the center of the arena, a floating platform held the Galactic Council. There were 12 council members, one from each of the most powerful species. They sat in tall chairs made of light, looking down at the white sand below. The high speaker was a Solari named Ellen. She was ancient, her skin shifting through soft colors like a sunset. When she raised her hand, the entire arena went silent. "Today, we assess combat readiness," Ellen announced. Her voice carried to every corner of the arena without effort. "Each species will demonstrate their training methods. The council will judge and record. Let us begin." The first demonstrations were impressive. The Valkyrie showed their weapon drills. Warriors moved in perfect formation, their energy blades cutting through the air like lightning. When they struck the training targets, the targets melted into nothing. The crowd cheered. The Mordics came next. They demonstrated their famous Death March, a training exercise where soldiers fought each other for hours without rest. Their metal bodies crashed together with terrible force. Sparks flew into the air. The sound was deafening. When they finished, they stood without breathing hard. The crowd cheered louder. The Solari performed their mind combat. Two warriors faced each other across the sand. They did not move. They did not speak. But something invisible happened between them. One warrior suddenly collapsed, his mind broken by psychic force. The crowd gasped in appreciation. Species after species took their turn. The Kreth showed their swarm tactics. The Valkyrie showed their poison training. The Neth showed their shape-shifting drills. Each demonstration was more spectacular than the last. Then came the humans. Commander Taiho led his 12 soldiers onto the arena floor. The crowd fell quiet, but not from respect. They were quiet because they were curious. What could these soft, weak creatures possibly show them? Ambassador Yuna sat in the diplomatic section, her face calm but her heart beating fast. Taiho stopped in the center of the arena and bowed to the council. Then he turned to his soldiers. "Begin warm-up," he said in Korean. Sergeant Jisoo stepped forward and began to lead the group in exercises. They started with simple stretches. Arms up, arms down, touch the toes, rotate the neck. In the crowd, someone laughed. Then more laughter spread through the arena. The mighty humans were stretching? This was their demonstration? But the stretches continued, and then they became something else. Jisoo started running in place. The other soldiers followed. Their feet hit the sand in perfect rhythm. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. What are they doing? The Mordics General Vorn asked the alien beside him. "I do not know," came the reply. "Perhaps this is a ritual?" 15 minutes of running in place. 20 minutes. The humans' breathing became heavier, but they did not stop. Sweat appeared on their skin. The crowd had stopped laughing. They were confused now. Then Private Dongwu stepped away from the group and began to run around the arena. Not a sprint, not a race. Just a steady, endless run. 1 lap. 2 laps. 5 laps. 10 laps. The other soldiers continued their exercises. Push-ups, sit-ups, jumping, squatting. The movements were simple but constant. They did not pause to rest. They did not slow down. 30 minutes passed. Dongwu was still running. His face was red. His uniform was dark with sweat. But his legs kept moving. How long will he run? A Valkyrie asked another. Surely he must stop soon. Soft creatures cannot maintain such activity. But Dongwu did not stop. 1 hour passed. He was breathing hard now. His steps were heavy. But he kept going. The crowd was completely silent now. No one was laughing. No one was talking. They were all watching this strange human who would not stop running. In the soldier group, Sergeant Jisoo had moved to a different exercise. She was carrying another soldier on her back while walking across the sand. Then she put that soldier down and picked up weights, heavy weights. She lifted them over her head again and again. Her arms shook. Her face was tight with effort. But she did not stop. Another soldier, Corporal Minho, was doing something the aliens found disturbing. He was hitting a heavy bag with his hands and feet. Each strike made a loud sound. His knuckles began to bleed. He did not stop. He hit the bag harder. 2 hours passed. Dongwu was still running. He had completed over 50 laps around the massive arena. His running was slower now, almost a shuffle. But he would not stop. "This is impossible," the Solari Queen whispered. "His body should have failed by now. Our calculations show that humans can only maintain such activity for short periods." "Perhaps your calculations are wrong," said a voice beside her. It was Ambassador Yuna, who had walked over from the diplomatic section. "Our calculations are never wrong," the Queen replied coldly. Yuna smiled. "Then watch." 3 hours passed. Dongwu finally stopped running. He had completed over 80 laps. When he stopped, he bent over and vomited onto the sand. His legs were shaking. His body was broken with exhaustion. But then something happened that made the entire arena freeze. Dongwu wiped his mouth, stood up straight, and walked back to his group. He picked up weights and began lifting them. "No," Vorn said. "No, that is not possible. His body is damaged. He must rest." But Dongwu did not rest. None of the humans rested. They continued their training. Push-ups, pull-ups, fighting drills, weapons practice. Their movements were not as fast as the Solari. Their strength was not as great as the Velthari. They could not match the metal bodies of the Mordics, but they did not stop. The council members were leaning forward in their chairs now. The High Speaker Ellen had forgotten her ancient dignity. She was staring at the humans with her mouth slightly open. What drives them? She asked no one in particular. They should have collapsed hours ago. What force keeps them moving? Commander Taiho heard the question. He looked up at the council platform and answered in a voice that carried across the silent arena. "We call it will." The word meant nothing to most aliens. They had no translation for it. Will? What was will? Was it a power source? A drug? A type of weapon? But as they watched the humans continue their endless training, they began to understand. Will was something that came from inside. It was the ability to keep going when the body wanted to stop. It was the refusal to quit when everything hurt. It was terrifying, because the Velthari could be outfought. The Mordics could be out-armored. The Solari could be blocked with the right shields. But how do you defeat an enemy who simply refuses to stop? The demonstration was supposed to last 1 hour. The humans trained for 6. When Commander Taiho finally called an end, his soldiers were barely able to stand. They were covered in sweat, blood, and sand. Their bodies trembled with exhaustion. But when they walked off the arena floor, they walked with their heads high. The crowd did not cheer. The crowd did not know what to do. They sat in confused silence, trying to understand what they had seen. In the diplomatic section, Ambassador Yuna allowed herself a small smile. The message was clear. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They had no special powers or natural weapons, but they had something else. Something that could not be measured or calculated. They had the ability to suffer and continue, and that, the aliens were beginning to realize, might be the most dangerous ability of all.